Greetings and welcome to From the Basement. In this video series, we're going to take a look at Chapter 4 out of the Game Maker's Apprentice, Laz the Jumping Jelly, or Slime Ball, or whatever. He's a purple thing that likes to jump around on crates. So the main focus on this particular chapter, at least what we're going to be learning here, is parenting, which is actually not in this chapter. It's in a future chapter, but I feel this is a better place to introduce it. Also, the importance of origins and some animation tricks. So the animation and parenting are sort of going to be the key learning aspects from this chapter. And now, by this point, you should be quite familiar with loading in resources. So why don't we go ahead and break here and get all resources loaded in. Just go ahead and get all the sprites loaded in, get the background loaded in, get the sounds loaded in, everything. But I want you to do one thing different from what the book says. The book mentions changing origins on the sprites. I don't want you to do that. I want you to load in the sprites and do not change the origins. This will cause a bug. I want you to see what this bug is going to look like. I want you to experience this bug. So when you're loading in the sprites, do not change the origins. All right, be right back. And we're back. So we got everything loaded in. Now, hopefully you noticed that on some of these images you needed to remove backgrounds. On some of them you did not want to remove backgrounds. For example, the card box and the wood box need their backgrounds removed, but the stone box is going to look a little bit strange if you remove its background. Also, notice we're getting a lot more resources now. I mean, this is still not an unmanageable level, but we still are starting to get quite a few things here. I'm sure you're beginning to see how the bigger and the closer these games get to actual games, the more and more resources that we end up with. So I want to show you a nice little organizational trick in Game Maker. You can create your own folders for these things to go into. So if on Sprites here, I can right-click, and I'm going to create a group. Why they don't just call it folders, I don't know, but it's creating a group. So I'm going to create a group, and I'm going to call this group Laz. I got this little folder down here, so I'm going to take all of my Laz objects here and drag them down in here. Now, unfortunately, you do have to do this one at a time. And if I wanted to create things directly in here, I could right-click on the Laz folder itself and notice that now that sprite's being created directly into that folder, which I don't actually want that sprite, so I am going to get rid of it. And just for example's sakes, I'm going to also, not create sprite. I'm going to create a group, a folder here, called boxes. I'm going to put all of my box sprites in here. Okay. So perhaps a bit overkill for this project. I mean, honestly, we're not getting that many resources yet, but I'm sure you can see how this will be very useful later on, especially for your final project where you could have 20, 30 sprites in your project. Having some form of organization will make it far easier to be able to keep track of them. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start getting some functionality created for this. We're going to take this in stages. First, we're going to focus on getting Lazarus moving correctly, jumping around on walls. And then we will slowly work one box at a time at getting the box falling and crushing functionality in. And that's where we'll hit our parenting. And then the next focus from there in the final video will be actually getting the gameplay set up, getting the title screen set up, getting the next preview working, ending the level properly, things like that. So let's go ahead and start getting things together here. And I could have sworn I turned that off, so apologies. There we go. And all right, so objects. Create objects. Let's start off with the wall, because honestly, that's the easiest object to actually get done. And actually, technically, I should take that out of there, but that's okay. And it's just a wall. It's got a sprite. It's solid, and it pretty much doesn't do anything else. The wall is nice and simple. Lazarus is a little bit more complicated. How this is going to work is we're going to have a Lazarus stand object. And reacting appropriately to user input, we will change that Lazarus stand object into the left, right, jump, right, afraid, and squished objects to play the appropriate animations. Again, we're kind of getting into the same situation we had with the Galactic Mailer project. Yes, it is completely, perfectly possible, and in fact perhaps a bit more normal, to just have a single Lazarus object that switches and plays the appropriate animation at the appropriate time. However, to do that in the drag and drop interface that we are using, honestly, it would be a nightmare. The logic involved usually trying to use drag and drop would be a mess. Far, far easier, since we're sticking purely with the drag and drop logic, to use object transitions and have our different states of behavior be different objects. And that's sort of like the key thing to keep in mind here. We're using these different objects to model different behavior states. So like in the Galactic Mailer, we had 2 states, landed and flying. In Lazarus, we've got multiple states. We have standing, jumping left, jumping right, moving left, moving right, and being afraid. And being squished. So, like I said, can you do this in one object? Yes. And actually, that's a very good point. I should focus on just a tiny bit more. Very seldom the question of, can I do this, is asked. Is the answer no? The answer is almost always yes. It's like, can I do X? Yes. Can I do Y? Yes. Can I do Z? Of course you can. How much pain and suffering are you willing to go through? That's usually the actual better question. How much pain and suffering and time and blood and sweat and tears will it take me to do this? And sometimes the answer to that is, when you look at it, is, oh, my. Yeah, I didn't want that feature that much anyways. So be aware of that. All right, so enough chitter-chattering. Let's get some slime balls created. So first, we're going to go ahead and create placeholders for all of our states. So create object and set our sprites while we're at it. So this will be, oops, cursor, behave yourself. This will be Laz stand. Set him to the appropriate sprite. Whoa. There it is. And then just close it out. We're going to go through and create all of our objects first, because they're all kind of interdependent on each other. You kind of need, Laz stand and Laz right to both be existing at the same time. So before we put in the functionality, we got to do it this way. So Laz right. All right. And actually, there's no real need for me to do this on camera, so I'm going to pause it here. And when we come back, we'll have everything in. Just make sure you go through and create all of the Lazes. Laz stand, right, left, jump left, and squished. We do not need yet, at least, an afraid Laz. That one we can do with a sprite switch. So create a Laz stand, right, left, jump, right, and squished. And we'll be back in a moment. And back. Okay, now I've got quite a few Lazes here again, and we're going to have actually double the number of boxes down here in our objects eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and put my folders in again. So I'm going to create a group. I'm going to call this group Laz and get all these Lazes tossed in there. And then once we go to do the boxes, I will create a box group right off the bat, so that way we don't have to move them back in. And again, this is purely optional. This has no impact on the functionality of your game. It's just an organizational thing, purely optional. Okay, now we're going to do everything that the book has before we reach the following boxes, but I'm definitely not going to be following the order that the book does things in, because I want to approach this a little bit more how you might actually approach it from a development point of view instead of following a step-by-step instruction from a book. So what's the general idea of this game? We haven't even said that yet, so let's deal with that. The general idea with Laz is that you have been tracked in this factory by the Slime Father. Yes, I know, and I'm sorry, but that's what the book says. So he is trapped in this factory by a horrible pun, and the horrible pun is trying to crush Lazarus with boxes. You know, that pretty much kills anything, especially little blobs of jelly. And so the goal here is that we want to try to have the boxes fall in a certain pattern, so that way we can climb out of the pit that we have found ourselves in, hit the button, and stop the factory. So, lots of moving side to side and jumping up on boxes and falling down off of boxes. So let's set up a test level first. So I'm going to create a room. And what is this test level going to look like? And yeah, we can go ahead and put in our background, so I'll do that. Oops, and no, this is not a foreground image. So we got a background here. And so what do I want to do with this? Well, I don't want Lazarus to be able to escape, so I'm going to grab this wall here. And, oh, hey, wait a minute. We've got a grid issue here. Remember, grid issues, the snap settings are very important. So what snap settings do we need? I did not mean to redo. Well, if we come back up here and we look at our sprite wall, we can see this is a 40 by 40 image. So that's what we need to set our snap settings to. So bring back up our room. If I can click on the right spot. There we go. And change the snap to 40, 40. And now I can draw down these walls. Now, for a test environment, I don't want any chance of falling out. So I'm just going to paint down. Oops, don't really need those. Paint down a box. We got to leave this top part open for falling boxes later. And then I got to think about, okay, well, how can I test Lazarus's movements? If I put Lazarus right here, how can I test him out? And as we can see here, Lazarus is not snapping properly, so we've got some other issues to look at, but we'll get to that in a moment. How can I test his movement? Well, I know that Lazarus needs to be able to move left and right. According to our design document, aka the book, Lazarus needs to be able to jump up one level. He needs to be able to fall down to the ground, and he shouldn't be able to jump up higher than one level. So what I need to do is, well, if I place walls here and here, that gives me room to move left and right. This also gives me the ability to jump up one and jump up one. Oops. And actually, no, let's see here, I don't want to do that. I'll move things in a little bit closer here. Okay, so why do I have this in this specific pattern? This allows me to do quite a bit of testing. I can move left, I can move right without having to jump over anything. I can jump up to the right, I can jump up to the left. I can fall one space to the right, I can fall one space to the left. I can fall more than one space to the left, I can fall more than one space to the right. After falling more than one space, I can move left and right. I can also test I cannot jump up more than one high to the right. I cannot jump up more than one high to the left. When you're designing test levels, it's very important to take a moment to pause and think and try to figure out what is it that I am testing? What is it that I need to test? What kind of movements or functionalities or interactions are there that I need to work on? This gives me a perfect way of dealing with things. Now, I want to talk for a moment about what's going on with Laz here. He's not sitting very good. And that has to do a little bit with the difference between Game Maker Studio and Game Maker 6. See, in Game Maker 6, it's just going to automatically have the collision square take up the full 40 by 40 pixel area, whereas in Game Maker, if we come over here to our Laz stand sprite, and oh, wait a minute, 32 by 32. Oh, I think I know what I did. I think I loaded in the icon for Laz instead of the actual Laz. Yep, that's what I did. So I was like, okay, wait a minute, this is really odd. We still have some collision issues here. So Laz stand, remove background, yes, okay. If I go into my modify mask, you can see the collision mask is pretty narrow here, but he'll sit better now. So yeah, that was actually the issue. I was misreading the issue there. We still have collision. We'll still have some issues a little bit later on, but it's not the one that I was thinking we were going to hit yet. So if your Laz is strangely floating in the air, go back and check to make sure that you have the 40 by 40 pixel version. If you have the 32 by 32 pixel version, it means you did what I did, and you loaded in the wrong Lazarus. Alright, so if I go back to my room now, yeah, see, that looks much better. That's what we're supposed to be seeing. Alright, so now that our room looks good, let's go ahead and get movement. So how is this going to work? And again, the reason why I'm approaching it this way is because now this is perhaps a little bit more natural in terms of how you might be approaching it if you were actually developing this game. You know what kind of movements you want Lazarus to be able to do. You build up your test room, and now you're going to slowly, remember, iterative process, you're going to slowly add in functionality piece by piece until you can handle all of these different scenarios. And we're getting kind of close to 20 minutes on this video, and there's actually quite a bit to do on movement. So I'm going to go ahead and break the video here, and on the next video, when we pick it back up, we will get into movement. And so, until then.